In the 10 years since Mercedes-Benz began selling the Maybach S-Class here in China, it's become one of the most prestigious vehicles you can buy, and it's also had essentially zero competition from Chinese automakers. Until now, because there's finally a luxury EV sedan from a Chinese automaker that's ready to go toe-to-toe with the Maybach, the $105,000 NIO ET9. Would you like to come to China and drive some of these interesting Chinese cars and see some of the most fascinating and important auto shows in the world? You are the perfect candidate for the Wheelsboy EV Tour. That's right, we are inviting our fans to join us here in China in 2025 for 3 different events. Shanghai in April, Chengdu in August, and Guangzhou in November. Registration for the Shanghai event, which is based around the Shanghai Auto Show, the world's most important auto show by far, has already begun. So reach out now to tour@wheelsboy.cn to learn how you can register and join.
Welcome to Wheelsboy, where we cover the newest, coolest, and wildest vehicles from the Chinese car market. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell.
At 5.3 meters long, 2 meters wide, and 1.62 meters tall, the ET9 is larger than an S-Class, a 7 Series, or an A8L, particularly that height, which is actually closer to a lot of SUVs. It's also got SUV-sized 23-inch wheels. That explains why I'm not entirely sure whether I should even refer to this as a sedan. It's got the fastback roofline and big wing of a Porsche Panamera, but it's nowhere near as low and sporty as the Panamera. The front end is actually quite high, but not very long, because it doesn't need to pack a V8 or V12 engine like a traditional luxury car. It is long enough to fit a 105-liter frunk, which, if you've got the key in your pocket, you can open using your foot or via voice commands. Hi, NOMI. 打开前备箱. It's also the first frunk I've ever seen that's electrically opening and closing.
Thanks to its bulging rear end, the trunk is also massive, measuring 544 liters. Once again, that's larger than an S-Class or a 7 Series, though it's slightly smaller than an A8L.
The ET9 uses the same Aquila sensor suite as other NIO models, with one major difference. Instead of a single lidar unit that's mounted at the top of the windshield, it's got 3. That one on the windshield and one on each side.
I still don't know whether to call the ET9 a sedan, an SUV, a crossover, or a weird wagon, but I can say with certainty that it looks much better in person than it does in photos. It's strange, there's no doubt about that, but it's a charming kind of strange.
The interior of the NIO ET9 is, in a word, beautiful. The material qualities, the styling, it's all just as sumptuous as I would expect when they're asking over $100,000 for the privilege of owning one. I appreciate that it's also not too simple, too minimalist. There's a pleasing complexity to it. A long screen in the back, a strip of chrome here, a bit of quilted leather on the door panel. It's more intricate than any previous NIO, but that just means there's more details to appreciate. Good news for lovers of NOMI, the little robot head there on the dashboard. She's received a pretty comprehensive upgrade in the form of new motors, which means her range of motion from left to right is now up to 170 degrees, and she can bop her head up and down even faster to the music. Her display is also now color, and no longer just black and white. With all due respect to NOMI, however, she is not the most interesting thing in the front row of the ET9. That would be the steering wheel. Just like the Tesla Cybertruck, this has fully drive-by-wire steering, so there is no physical connection between it and the road. This has a number of advantages, one of the interesting ones being that the telescoping function can move up to 153 millimeters or 6 inches. That's more than double that of a normal vehicle.
It also subverts pretty much every driving habit you have because the steering angle is completely adjustable. Whereas the steering wheel on most cars is 1.5 turns lock to lock, the ET9's is 0.66, so you'll never have to cross your hands over when taking a turn. When using the automatic parking function, the steering is even quicker, needing only 10 degrees of steering angle to accomplish what would normally take a complete turn of the wheel.
Let's be honest. They don't even have to turn the wheel in order to get the car into the parking space. They just do it a little bit to make you feel more comfortable. Speaking of comfort, because there's no physical connection between the wheel and the road via a steering column, the vibrations that would normally transmit through that steering column don't have to exist. They can choose whether or not to transmit them using the electric motors. If you do want steering feel, you can always just turn that filter off. I have to admit that just like with the Tesla Cybertruck, I was a bit hesitant when it came to safety with this system, but just like the Tesla Cybertruck, there's a lot of redundancy built in. We're talking dual sensors, dual power supplies, dual hardware, and dual software. I can't wait to try it out on the road, but unfortunately that's not going to be happening in today's video. There are very few NIO ET9s on the entire planet at this point, but I'm still dumb enough to actually try and drive one on public roads. The real reason I can't do it is because this is a pre-production vehicle without a license plate. There's also a very nice person from NIO right off camera watching me like a hawk to make sure that I don't take it for a joyride in the parking. What I can do is jump into the back row, where we find 2 seats. I asked NIO if there's ever going to be a 5-seat version of this car, and I received a resounding no. They believe that a true luxury car only needs 4 seats. Frankly, I think they have a point, because I can't imagine that many people using the middle seat on a Maybach S-Class unless they're getting kidnapped, so maybe not that big of a loss, especially considering what you get in exchange.
In the ET9, everyone in the back seat is a VIP and enjoys the same luxurious treatment, including zero-gravity mode with adjustable leg rests and an entertainment screen. Thanks to the bisected glass roof, they also get their own individual sunshades, a feature I have never seen before. The partition between the seats does more than just separate the 2 passengers. It's also where you'll find a trick airline-style folding table. Every inch of that table is metal and has the weight to prove it. It's not easy to unfold, but it's solid as a rock, and it has a nice little folding makeup mirror on the underside.
This table can be put in front of either passenger, like so, or it can be placed in the middle for them to look at together. NIO says, according to their research, it is exceedingly uncommon for both tables to be in use at the same time, and much more likely that people would want to have a shared table like this, maybe somewhere to put a laptop so you can look at a PowerPoint together. I think that makes sense, but the folding style does mean that there can only be 1 wireless pad. However, you do get 2 Type-C charging ports back here and a 220-volt outlet. There's a small touchscreen here on the center console which you can adjust the angle of, and the motor for that is silenced. That's normally the kind of detail you only find on a Mercedes-Benz Maybach S-Class or maybe even a Rolls-Royce. Speaking of a Rolls-Royce, these are the softest, plushest floor mats I have experienced outside of a Rolls. I've taken my shoes off for this part of the video, not because I'm worried about getting this very expensive car dirty, but because it just feels so good to rub my feet in this deep pile carpet. The ET9 has 2 interesting storage compartments here on the center island. The first is a password-protected compartment between the seats, which you open via this touch button. It's also got 2 layers, so you can keep your extra secret stuff on the bottom layer. The second is a refrigerated and heated drawer that pops out here between the 2 seats. I find this placement a little bit odd because if your leg rests haven't been completely drawn in, it's kind of hard to get anything in and out of it. I wish that they had switched to the 2 storage compartments. However, as we learned in the Denza Z9, if you put a refrigerator here between the seats, it's going to jut into the rear cargo area and compromise rear storage.
There are many details inside the ET9 that bring to mind the first-class cabin of an airplane, such as the reading light, which is positioned behind your head so it never bothers your eyes. This started to make sense once I learned that one of the many designers behind the ET9 was Chris Thomason, whose previous projects included the Gulfstream G650.
To be honest, there are simply too many details inside of the NIO ET9 to begin to fit inside of a video of any reasonable length. When I asked the people at NIO to send me a list of this car's highlights, I received a Word document that was almost 50 pages in length. For the record, your average car's highlight document is something like 3 to 6 pages. I will, however, take the time to share with you one last feature on this car, the Skyride fully active hydraulic suspension. Some of you may have already seen the video in which NIO stacked a bunch of champagne glasses on the hood of an ET9 and then drove it over a series of speed bumps without spilling any of the champagne. Obviously, this car can't be driven, so I have to have another way to show it off for you. And luckily, I do.
When it comes time to play a movie, the ET9 becomes a rolling 4D theater, rocking back and forth and side to side along with what's happening on the screen. As you can see, this isn't just a little dip and dive. The car moves around like crazy. It can also do this along with music.
If it can manage that, I can see why a few speed bumps wouldn't be much of an issue, but we'll only know for sure once we can get behind the wheel. But while I can't comment on the driving experience, I can say with confidence that the interior experience of the NIO ET9 is at least a rival, if not better, than anything in a Mercedes-Benz S-Class Maybach. Think about that for a moment. If I had told you 5 years ago that this thing would be able to rival a Mercedes-Benz Maybach S-Class, a Chinese EV, I would have been laughed out of the room. But here in 2025, nobody's laughing, especially the Germans.